Bedtime stories for kids. Stories for meditation and mindfulness to help children and toddlers feel calm and fall asleep fast. Written by Marissa Nobel. Narrated by Melanie Hench. Magic. Stories of magic allow children to see the world in a new way. Magic allows a listener to see a world where anything can happen without the constraints of our natural laws. Children love stories with magical elements in them. In this section of the book, there are 5 stories that are filled with magical characters. Each story takes place in a different area and allows children to imagine a world filled with new possibilities. Stories have had magical elements in them since the beginning of time. Some of the most famous short stories with magic in them are the stories collected by the Brothers Grimm. These stories are world famous and have been made into many movies and TV shows. The stories in this section of the book use magic as a way to tell a tale where the child learns a lesson, just as the Grimm's fairy tales did. The Witch and the Princess. This story tells the tale of an evil witch and a good princess. In this story, there is a potion that creates problems for the princess, and she has to deal with the aftermath of her actions while under the spell of the potion created by the evil witch. This story teaches children that sometimes actions have consequences, even if you didn't mean them, and the way to recovering from those bad actions sometimes takes good actions that may not be the way that you wanted them to turn out. Once upon a time, there was a mean and evil witch named Madison. Madison was a very bad witch, and she hated everything that people loved. Madison hated sunshine and flowers and soft, cuddly animals. She lived in a witch's castle at the top of a very scary mountain. The one thing she hated most of all was the beautiful Princess Jenna. Jenna was a kind princess and ruled over the kingdom of Light with kindness and gentleness. Light was a small kingdom that didn't have any problems. In fact, most of the problems of this place were created by the evil witch. Jenna wished that they didn't have to deal with the witch, but being kind, she didn't know what to do about the witch. There were some people that lived in the kingdom of Light that loved the evil witch, and they liked being around her. One day, the witch created a potion that would turn the good princess evil. She sent someone over to the princess's castle with a batch of cookies that had the evil potion baked into them. With one bite of a cookie, Jenna became evil, and the people of the kingdom didn't like her anymore, so they banished her. Eventually, the potion wore off, and Jenna was good again. However, the damage had been done. She had been mean to her followers and needed to make things right. Jenna, being a good princess, decided to create a new kingdom. She called her kingdom Change because it was a change from her past as a princess. When she created her kingdom, she allowed all the citizens of Light to come to visit and move there if they wanted to. One thing that Jenna did, being a good princess, was that she went around to all the people that she had harmed while she was under the influence of the potion. She apologized to the bakers and the candlestick makers and asked them if there was anything that she could do to fix the damage that she had done while under the influence of the potion. Some of the people didn't want to be friends with the princess anymore because of the things she had done while she was on the potion. The potion made her burn down the library, and the librarians and the book lovers said they accepted her apology, but would prefer it if she stayed away from the library in the future. Jenna was sad that she couldn't go to the library in the Kingdom of Light anymore. She felt that she needed to do things to make things better for the library, even if they didn't want her around anymore. So, she decided to donate all of her books to the library to help them have more books for the citizens of her old kingdom. Doing this good deed made her happy, even if she didn't feel happy all the time when thinking about all the bad things she had done in the past when she was under the spell of the evil potion. She loved her new kingdom, but also felt bad because of the problems that she had caused. Eventually, she began to love her new kingdom as much as she loved the kingdom beyond it. She made new friends and enjoyed being helpful to her new kingdom. One day, she was thinking about how sad it made her feel when people didn't like her because she was evil for that time, and decided to see if she could make friends with the evil witch Madison. She tried to understand how the witch felt, and knew that sometimes you can't help being evil. She sent the witch a letter telling her about how she loved her and wanted her to be happy in her new kingdom. The witch appreciated the letter, but still didn't like the princess. The princess learned that she couldn't control how other people felt about her and went along with her life, happy that she had tried her best to make friends with the people who didn't like her. This helped the princess to grow into a wise and generous queen, where she ruled with compassion and kindness to everyone that she came into contact with. The end. Sweet dreams, little one. A Snowman Saves Christmas. This story tells a tale of a magical town where Santa Claus lives with the elves. In this town, there is a snowman that only wishes to be helpful for Santa, but because of the rules, he was unable to be an elf. He learns that sometimes being different can help out in ways that no one had anticipated. Once upon a time, there was a snowman who lived in Christmas Town. He lived high on a hill in a house that was part of a tree. This was no tree house, but a house that was built inside of a tree. Houses made into the sides of trees were normal in Christmas Town. They also had big gingerbread houses that people lived in, and Christmas trees were decorated all year long. The snowman that lived in Christmas Town wished to one day be an elf for Santa. Usually, only elves were allowed to be Christmas elves for Santa. This was a rule that was written in the big book of Christmas rules that all the residents of Christmas Town lived by. Year after year, the snowman would try to become an elf. Sometimes, he would wear a disguise and would try to make his way into the Christmas Town Christmas factory. Unfortunately, the guard noticed that he was a snowman and not an elf. He figured it was because of his carrot nose, but it might have been because he was rounder than anyone else and had twigs for arms. This year, the snowman had a great idea. Instead of trying to work at the Christmas factory, he would build and make his own presents and give them to the children himself. He figured Santa wouldn't be angry with him if he did this. He longed to see the smiling faces of children as they opened the presents that he wrapped and made for them all himself. At first, he was going to make the gifts, but he realized that he didn't have that much time, and he was only one snowman. Then he thought he would get the gifts from somewhere, but he didn't have any money, and stealing was wrong. He knew that he had to make money to buy the gifts somehow, but he didn't have any. Snowmen usually didn't have jobs. He knew how to slide on a sled very well, but didn't know what kind of job he could get from that. Then he remembered something. He went into a field and began to make lots of little snowballs. Then he wrote a sign that said, "Snowballs, $1." He figured this would work because everyone loved snowball fights. However, no one came to buy his snowballs. He sat there for hours at a time and waited. Then he decided to try and get a real job, so he went to the baker to see if he could help. The baker laughed loudly. He said if the snowman were to work in the bakery, he would probably melt because the ovens were so hot. The snowman didn't want to melt, so that seemed like a bad job for him. So the snowman went to a big factory that made ice blocks. He figured he needed a job in someplace that was cold so he wouldn't melt. But the owner of the factory laughed at him. The blocks of ice that they made were very big and heavy, and the snowman only had thin stick arms. He would probably break his arms if he tried to lift the blocks at all. The snowman didn't want to break his arms, so he decided that was not the right job for him. So the snowman thought again and went to work at the ice cream shop. There, the ice cream shop owner didn't laugh. He thought it would be a good idea for the snowman to work there. It would never be too cold for him, and if the ice cream ever did start to melt, he could help to keep the ice cream cold with his body made of snow. But the ice cream man also said something about making ice cream from the snowman, and that scared the snowman, so he walked away pretty quickly and never looked back. The snowman was sad. Nothing he had tried had worked. He sank into the ground in the middle of the city and let his hat slip down over his sad button eyes. He decided to sing a song that had always helped him when he felt sad. As he sang, he wasn't paying attention, so he didn't notice that there were people passing by him and that they would put money into his hat as they passed. They loved the way he sang Christmas carols. Many of the people told him how much they loved his singing, so he kept on singing, and he kept making more money. Finally, he looked up and noticed that his hat was full of money. He got so happy he began to sing more songs with joy in his heart, because tomorrow he would be able to buy presents for the children, and tomorrow he would be able to make the children happy. He took the money that he had earned and purchased gifts and wrapping paper. He brought dolls and cars and worked hard to pack them with care. He even closed them off with big, beautiful ribbons and bows. He was happy as he worked on the presents. Then the snowman thought to himself that he didn't have a way to deliver the presents to the children. He didn't have a Christmas sleigh. He figured that there was no way that Santa would ever lend him his sleigh, and besides, he thought, the reindeer would probably try to eat his carrot nose. The snowman finally had an idea. He would tie the presents to snails because snails could carry a lot. He figured that would work. Just when he had finished tying the presents to the snails, one of the Christmas elves passed by and wondered what he had done. He told the elf all about his plan to get the presents to the children by way of snail. The elf just started to laugh, and then he told the snowman that it was way too slow of a way to get Christmas presents to the children. The children would never get the presents on time. They wouldn't even get the presents to the people in the town in enough time. Besides, the elf also told him that in order to give presents to all the children, he would likely need about 1 million more presents because there were so many children in the world. However, the elf was still sad because something had happened and there would be no Christmas this year. Santa had gotten sick and was so sick he wouldn't be able to go on his Christmas Eve ride. The snowman thought about the problem. He didn't know what to do. The elf finally told him that all the elves in the factory had tried to go, but it was such a cold winter that everyone who wanted to go would just get sick too, and they didn't have any solution to their problem. The snowman was nervous and scared. He didn't like the idea that there might not be a Christmas. He thought and thought and thought about what to do. He had to make sure that someone could go and deliver the presents. But who could go out in such cold weather? The snowman said, "There won't be any Christmas without the gifts." But the elf reminded him that parents will also buy gifts for their children, and that Christmas is about the spirit of the holiday, not the toys that it brings. But the snowman remarked that Christmas is always better with presents, and the elf agreed with him. The elf agreed that while presents would make Christmas much better, people might learn a lot about charity in this time without a Santa Claus. However, he began to think about it much more. He wondered if there was someone out there that could possibly fill in for Santa in his time of need, to make sure that the presents that the elves had worked hard on all year were given out to the people. But it would have to be someone who could deal with all the cold weather without being made sick. The elf said, "If only there was someone who could deal with the cold better than an elf." The snowman thought back to his experiences looking for work and thought that maybe the ice cream man or the owner of the ice factory might help. But the elves said that they were too busy running their own businesses to take off on Christmas Eve and deliver presents for Santa. Then, while they were thinking, the snowman remembered that he was good for the ice factory because he was cold, but his arms were too thin for such big blocks. He would have been a good employee of the ice cream man, but he got scared when the man joked about making ice cream out of him. He knew he could lift presents without breaking his arms, and he knew he could deal with the cold weather without getting cold because he was made of snow. So finally, he told his idea to the elf, and this time, the elf didn't laugh. The elf looked at him and thought that he was right, and that they would have to present their idea to Santa Claus quickly because it was almost time for the Christmas Eve ride. So they hurried out to Santa Claus immediately. They walked over to the factory, and the greatest thing happened in the life of a snowman. He was allowed to see the inside of the Christmas Town Christmas factory, something he had dreamed of doing his entire life. He was so happy that he forgot that he was about to be able to have the most important Christmas elf job of them all. That is, of course, if Santa agreed. Santa was at first very surprised to meet the snowman, and at first, he didn't think the idea made any sense. But with a little Christmas magic, he made sure that even in the warm places in the world where they celebrated Christmas, that the snowman would not melt. Santa was so happy that his presents would be delivered. He gave the snowman a great big hug to thank him for the idea. However, because the snowman wasn't Santa, he wouldn't have the speed necessary to give everyone all the gifts that they wanted. But the elf reminded Santa that the parents still buy their own children gifts, and that people will have to learn about charity and goodwill toward their neighbors. Then, Santa offered the snowman his sled to use, and the snowman's heart leaped with joy. He not only would get to do the job of the head elf, he would get to drive Santa's sleigh. The snowman was so happy that he would be able to do this. But then he thought about the reindeer and his nose, and felt sad that his nose might get eaten. Santa knew that the snowman was going to have trouble managing the sleigh. He asked the snowman if there were any questions that he had about the sleigh and working it. "Santa, I'm worried that if I use your sleigh, that the reindeer might eat my nose," said the snowman with hesitation. Santa thought about the problem for a minute and began to think of ways that he could use the sleigh without the reindeer. "Well," said Santa, "you could use the sleigh without the reindeer, but I'm worried that it won't go fast enough to pull you and all the presents to the children in time without my reindeer." The snowman was sad again. He didn't know what to do. Then he thought about how good he was at sledding. "I'm really good at sledding down a mountain," said the snowman. "But that would only be helpful if you gave presents to the children at the bottom of the mountain," said Santa Claus. But then Santa had an idea. He could use his Christmas magic to make an everlasting snowslide that would help the snowman deliver the presents quickly. He would always be sledding down a mountain as long as he was on the midnight ride. He told the snowman that the slide would be there with him wherever he went. The snowman looked at the huge snowslide and told Santa that would work. Then they got everything together for the Christmas Eve ride. He was happy that not only his dream had come true, but that he was going to be able to help Santa out in his time of need. Santa warned the snowman to be careful of the fireplaces because they had once burnt his suit on one of his many rides. The snowman reminded Santa of the Christmas magic he had done to make sure that the snowman wouldn't melt, even in the hot places on Earth. Santa agreed that this should keep him safe, but worried that he might make the houses cold. So the snowman agreed to be careful, and that was how the snowman saved Christmas. The end. Sweet dreams, little one. The Sea Witch and Sea Dragons. This is a story about a community of seahorses that live in a coral reef. In this story, the animals have a problem and are looking for a way to have someone stop their problem from happening. The animals must turn to the Sea Witch in order to have some relief from a scourge of collectors that have burdened them for a long time. In the deep and beautiful blue Caribbean Sea, there was a colorful coral reef. There were many sea creatures that lived in the reef. Some of those creatures were shrimp, fish, eels, starfish, jellyfish, and lobsters. But there were so many different sea creatures that it was hard to list them all. In the reef, there lived a colony of seahorses. They grew up around the corals. They lived in the large clumps of seagrass that grew around the reef. The tiny little seahorses loved their vibrant home. They thought that it was beautiful and safe because their homes were amongst the glowing anemones. Anemones could sting, so they kept away any harmful animals that might seek to hurt them. Because of the help from the anemones, the seahorses were able to live peacefully. The father seahorses carried the babies in their bellies. The mother seahorses would swim around the grasses and compliment the dads for being such great parents. The baby seahorses would play and swim around the plants in the area. The seahorses were friendly with each other and all the other creatures that lived in the reef. They were very fond of the starfish and the clownfish because they were fun to play with. In the morning, they would wake up and feel the warm sun shining on them through the water. The sun would make the reef vibrant and glimmering with color. Every night, they would go to sleep when the moon was shining its soft glowing light. Day and night, the reef was always tranquil and beautiful. The seahorse colony would always help each other by working together to find food and share it. They would also help watch over each other's babies. There were rarely any problems in the seahorse colony. However, sometimes there were strange creatures made from metal and cloth that would dive down, blowing bubbles and pointing their fins at different fish and other things that they found interesting. These odd beings made a mess whenever they came down to the reef, stirring up silt and making waves that rocked the homes of the little sea creatures. The metal and cloth creatures were often accompanied by flashes of light. The light wasn't soft like the sun and moonlight that filtered through the waters onto the reef. It was harsh and bright and blinding. That light made the sea creatures see spots or go blind for a few seconds. It made them confused, and that was not the worst part. Sometimes, these things even grabbed some sea creatures and carried them up to the surface, never to be seen or heard from again. Whenever those odd beasts appeared, everyone who lived on the reef hid. It was a certainty that these strange things were dangerous. One day, as everyone on the reef was having a lovely morning looking at the coral flowers shimmering in the sunlight, a splash sounded from above. Another splash, and then another followed that splash. The seahorses knew what that meant. So did all the others that lived on the reef. "Everyone hide!" a yellow seahorse called, and everyone hid. They stayed in their hiding places, hoping that the strange creatures would find that there was nothing to see and then go away. But they didn't go. Instead, the odd things explored the reef, causing clouds of silt to float up into the water. They made a horrible mess and would not leave. They even made those bright light flashes. The strange creatures continued to swim around, searching and sometimes snatching shells or other items and putting them in bags. The animals watched from their hiding spots. Bubbles was hiding in a small crevice with a starfish and another seahorse. "Those are collectors," said an orange seahorse. The orange seahorse was old and wise. "What are collectors?" "When those creatures come down here and make a mess, the ones that take things and creatures like us are collectors." "Why would they do that?" asked the yellow seahorse, who was now even more curious. "Why would they take someone from their home to collect them?" "No one really knows," said the orange seahorse. "They come here and make a mess, grab our neighbors, and go away." "Well, maybe we should see the sea witch and see if she can help us with our problem." "I don't know about that," said the orange seahorse. "She's a witch, so I'm scared of her." The yellow seahorse didn't think it was a bad idea. She wasn't scared of the sea witch, but was very scared of the collectors. They needed to find a way to end this habit that the collectors had of taking their neighbors and ruining their neighborhood by making a mess. They also thought of asking the sea dragons for help. The orange seahorse was happier with that plan, so they decided to see the sea dragons first to see if they could help with their problem. However, the orange seahorse reminded the yellow one that the sea dragons might not want to help. The sea dragons didn't live in the reef and would likely not care about their problems. No one had ever ventured off to see the sea dragons before. They left the reef and first hid behind a stone to sneak away so that no one would see them. They didn't want to have to tell anyone about their plan in case it didn't work. After hiding behind the stone for a few moments, they were able to creep away through the thick seagrass. Once they got into the open ocean, they were scared. They knew they had no way to hide from the collectors in this water and could be taken away from their family and friends at any time. They had never been so far from the reef, and the water seemed so big and wide. It wasn't as full of life as the coral reef had been. However, while they were swimming toward the sea dragons, they were able to avoid having to talk to the bigger fish because they barely noticed two little seahorses making their way through the ocean at the bottom. They didn't know exactly where the sea dragons lived, but they knew that they lived deep in the ocean and would have to travel near to the sea witch to get there. They traveled deep into the ocean, where the water became almost black as night. They could barely see anything, but then they found a little cave in the bottom of the ocean with a woman in it. It was the sea witch. She was in her cave reading a magic book. "Hello?" said the yellow seahorse. "Are you the sea witch?" "Yes, I am Urchin the sea witch. Can I help you?" "Yes, I am Pip," said the yellow seahorse, "and this is Yum. We were searching for sea dragons." "Why on earth are you looking for the sea dragons? They are very scary, even to me." "Well, these collectors keep coming to the reef and taking our neighbors, and we want to stop them," said Pip the yellow seahorse. "Well, I have a potion that can help you in a pinch. It will summon a shark, and the collectors, or humans, will leave in an instant. I can't stand these human collector types. They need to just look and leave the ocean like it was. They think it's so beautiful. They have to touch everything and take it with them. But they need to just stop their harmful behavior." "We will take the potion, but we think the sea dragons will help us too," said Yum, the orange seahorse. "If you must," said Urchin. "They're about a half-day swim from here, right in a straight line." Yum and Pip took the potion from the sea witch and continued on their way to find the sea dragons. Soon enough, the sea dragons appeared. Pip thought they were magnificent with their long fins and bright colors. "My name is Pip, and this is Yum," Pip began. "We need your help." "What's the problem?" asked a red sea dragon named Roll. As fast as she could, Pip told them the story about the collectors. Roll listened carefully and thoughtfully. "I think we can help," Roll said. "How?" Yum asked. "You are not much bigger than we are, even though you are dragons." "Well," Roll answered, "I have a lot of friends, a few of which are a lot bigger than we are. I am sure that they will be able to help." Roll found the rest of the sea dragons, and she was right. They were much bigger than she was. They set off at the fastest speed they could go back to the reef and helped them with the collectors. As many sea dragons as there were, they were still not sure if this would stop the collectors from taking their friends. It took a few days for new collectors to show up, and when they did, the sea dragons scared them. But quickly, more returned to attempt to take the sea dragons away. Sea dragons were rarely seen outside of the deep, dark ocean. As one of the collectors tried to take Roll, Pip remembered that she had the potion from the sea witch. She opened the bottle and out popped a big magical shark. That scared the collectors good. After that day, the collectors never returned to the reef again. The end. Sweet dreams, little one. Patience is magical. This story tells the tale of two magical twins named Olivia and Brad. They are just babies and want to learn everything right away. They have magical powers, but even magic can't help them to learn the skill of walking. This is a great story to explain to children how anything worth doing takes time and effort. There were once two very unique twin babies. One was named Olivia, and the other was named Brad. Brad and Olivia were best friends, but what made them most unique was that they had magical powers. Their parents had been magicians, and so it was only natural that Olivia and Brad would have magical powers. From the moment the twins were born, they showed magical abilities. If Olivia wanted a toy, all she had to do was reach in the direction of the toy, and soon the toy was floating to her hand. If Brad wanted his mother, all he had to do was think about his mother, and she would appear. All the magical babies had to do was think about something they wanted, and it would usually appear. Since they were so magically gifted, it was not long before they learned to talk. Once they had learned to talk, they were able to do so much more. They could make things happening by talking about them. Like all little kids, Olivia and Brad loved to speak. They would talk to their parents, and when they went outside, they would speak to other kids. Most of all, they enjoyed talking to each other. The twins would also talk a lot in their sleep. Sometimes this would wake them up, and they would find that their bed was covered with toys and animals. For them, this was a great surprise to wake up to. They would often have to put the toys away, but they still had fun. For Olivia and Brad, learning was easy for them to do. They would discover new things, and with those new things, brought knowledge and excitement. Every time they learned something new, they would talk about it. They loved talking about new discoveries with each other. They loved learning new things and couldn't wait to learn more. They even were waiting for the time when they could learn to walk and run. Olivia wanted to learn how to walk up big, tall hills. Brad wanted to learn how to run down them. Olivia wanted to learn how to run along the seashore and feel the waves crash around her ankles. Brad wanted to learn how to walk on the sand and feel the grainy sand underneath his feet. They decided that this would be the very next thing that they would learn. However, learning to walk and run was different for them than learning how to do other things. For some reason, it was not something they could just decide to do. In order to learn to walk or run, it required time and practice. They would have dreams of running around like the kids on the playground, but they couldn't just will themselves to do it. They wanted to be able to go on the slide, swing on the swings, and build things in the sandbox. Unfortunately for them, in order to do these things, they would have to learn how to walk first, and for them, that was a challenge. The twins were both excellent at scooting around, and they were very good at crawling. However, whenever they tried to stand up on their feet without the help of their mother and father, they couldn't do it. For them, it was easy to walk when they were holding the hands of their parents. They were even able to stand up when they were holding onto a table or a chair, but eventually, they would always fall down. It happened every time. They would fall right down on their bottoms. Eventually, it became very frustrating for them. Olivia and Brad would watch their parents walking around the house, or the kids running around the playground, and wondered why couldn't they walk. It looked to them as if everyone could walk except for them. They figured that if everyone was able to walk, then so could they. But they also figured that they probably needed to learn how. First, the twins decided to try and use magic to make themselves walk. They focused as hard as they could, harder than they had ever done before. Olivia decided to try first and pulled herself up and took a big step. Brad held his breath as he watched his sister try to walk. And then with a big flop, she fell right back on her bottom. She couldn't use magic to make herself walk. Then Brad decided to try it. Maybe he figured that he could do something that she couldn't do, because he figured maybe he had to walk first. He had been born first by a whole minute. Brad used his dad's big chair to pull himself up, and after standing there scared for a minute, he gathered up the bravery needed to try, and with a big plop, he fell down on his bottom as well. They then decided to try and use magic on each other. Brad would try and make Olivia walk with his magical powers, and she would try to make him walk with her magical powers. They figured if they focused on each other rather than themselves, things would work better this time. In fact, their parents had once told them never to try and cast a spell on themselves, so they decided to listen to that advice and tried their best to think up a spell that would make the other walk. "Make my brother walk," said Olivia. "Make my sister walk," said Brad. Then at the same time, they both tried to pull themselves up and began to take a step. They were both very confident and sure this time that the magic would work. Plop! Down went Olivia. Plop! Down went Brad. They both fell down on their bottoms and they still couldn't walk. Then they decided to go and get some pillows and pad themselves so that it wouldn't hurt so much when they failed to walk. They decided to try some different words this time and cast spells on each other again. "I command the magic powers to make my brother walk," said Olivia. But nope. Brad fell down again. He still couldn't walk. "Abracadabra, make my sister walk," said Brad. But this didn't work either. Olivia still couldn't walk. They stopped and were sad. They wondered why it was so difficult for them to learn how to walk. They figured since everything was so easy for them before, and they were magical after all, walking should be easy to do as well. However, it wasn't that easy as they thought it might be. They tried over and over again, making up newer and newer spells, but nothing worked. Eventually, they got tired and upset and started to cry, and then their mom and dad showed up to comfort them. "What's wrong?" said Mommy. "Why can't we walk yet?" asked Brad. "Yeah, why can't I walk? We tried spells and everything," cried Olivia. "It's okay. It's just not time for you to walk yet. Eventually you will get it."
"But I don't want to walk. I want to run," cried Brad.
"Olivia, Brad," chastised their father, "you need to have patience. It'll take so much time for you to learn how to walk and run." Their mother and father explained to them that sometimes the things that we want to learn how to do take patience and practice to learn. It isn't always easy to learn about the things that you want to do. They also explained to them that you cannot teach someone how to do something with magic. There is nothing that you can do to magically teach someone a skill. They have to learn it through patience. The twins didn't want to hear it. They wanted their parents, who were more powerful magicians than them, to cast spells on them to make them walk. However, their parents refused to do so. They told them that nothing worth doing will be done in a day, and if they wanted to learn how to walk, they would help them practice the skill slowly as normal children do. Besides, her mother reminded them that no magician can just magically teach them a skill. It took a long time, but eventually the little twins learned how to walk. The end. Sweet dreams, little one. The Magical Frog. In this story, a girl meets a magical talking frog that helps her to find a gem that grants her wishes. This story teaches young ones about responsibility and keeping their promises. It is a fantastical short story which is good for listening on nights when time is limited. There once was a young girl named Lily. Lily was 7 years old. She had decided to go out to the park to read her favorite book. She found a nice park bench and began to read. Eventually, she became tired. She took her sweater off and laid it down on the bench to take a nap. While she was trying to take a nap, she heard someone call her name.
"Lily,"
she heard the voice say. But where had that voice come from? She wondered.
"Lily,"
she heard the voice say again. Where was that voice coming from? She wondered who the voice could be. She didn't recognize it as one of her friends. She sat up from her position and started to look around. She didn't see anyone nearby her. She figured that she must have imagined the voice. Just as she was getting ready to get her stuff to leave the park, she heard the voice again.
"Lily, down here."
She looked down between her feet, and there was a frog sitting there. She figured that someone was playing a trick on her. There was no way the frog was talking. Nonetheless, knew her name.
"Whoever you are, stop trying to play a trick on me," she yelled.
"Lily," croaked the frog, just as Lily was staring right at it, wondering who could have placed this frog here. Hi?" said Lily. Lily didn't know what to think of the situation, so she decided to ask the frog some questions. "Why are you talking to me? How are you talking? What is a frog even doing talking?" said Lily, quickly demanding answers to her questions.
"Well,"
said the frog,
"I can talk because I am magical."
"I don't believe you," said Lily. "Prove to me that you are magical."
"Okay,"
said the frog.
"Do you see that nice big stone over there on the walkway?"
Lily looked down to the walkway for the stone and saw it. "Yes," said Lily, "I do."
"Good,"
said the frog.
"Please go pick it up."
Lily picked up the stone and she held it in her hand. She couldn't believe that she was talking to a frog, let alone doing what it was telling her to do. She felt that she must have gone crazy or something.
"Do you feel something different about that stone?"
asked the frog. "Well," said Lily, "yes, I actually do. It is warm." The frog asked Lily to hold the stone in the center of her hand. So she listened and placed the stone in the center of her palm. The frog then asked her to stretch her hand out towards him. The frog said the words,
"Hocus pocus,"
and suddenly the stone turned into a big red ruby. Lily figured that the ruby must be worth thousands of dollars. She had never seen a gem so big in her life. The ruby glimmered in the sunlight. That was enough for her to believe the frog. She went to place the gem into her pocket.
"Wait,"
said the frog.
"Don't just put that gem in your pocket yet."
"Why not? Didn't you give this to me as a gift?" Lily was confused about why the frog would make her a big, shiny ruby and then not want her to put it in her pocket for safekeeping.
"Don't put it in your pocket, because just like me, that gem is magical."
The frog explained to Lily that she could make a wish on the gem, should she choose to do so. Not knowing what else to do, she decided to make a wish. Lily wished to have a tasty ice cream cone to eat. She had gotten hungry since she had come to the park, and it was pretty warm on that day, and she figured an ice cream cone would be a great summer afternoon treat. In an instant, there was an ice cream cone in Lily's other hand. She was shocked. She didn't think that when she had gone to the park to read her book, that she would discover that frogs were magical and could make wish-granting gems, let alone that she would be able to get an ice cream cone for free today. The frog gave her a warning.
"You must only use this gem for good."
Lily listened to the frog and took the gem and put it into her pocket. She thanked the frog for the kindness that he had done for her. After she finished her ice cream cone, she decided to finally take that nap on the bench in the warm summer sun. After a while, she heard another voice. She wondered if it was another frog. Opening her eyes, she looked up and saw her mother's face. Lily woke up to her mother standing above her. She reached in her pocket to see if all the stuff with the frog had just been a dream, but there was a big red ruby in her pocket. "My!" exclaimed Mother. "What a beautiful gem you have! Where did you get it from?" "I got it from a magical frog," said Lily. Lily took her gem home with her, and every day she used it to wish for something good to happen. And every day, something good did happen. One day, her brother Ted asked to use her magical gem. She didn't think much of it, so she let him. He decided to wish to not have to go to school the next day. With that wish, the stone turned to dust. "My beautiful gem!" cried Lily. "What have you done?" Mother came into Lily's room to find out what the commotion was. "Ted used my gem for something bad," said Lily. "Oh, dear!" exclaimed Mother, cleaning up the dust from the gem. "I wish I had my gem back," said Lily. "I would keep it away from Ted if I did." Suddenly, the dust turned back into a gem, and Lily vowed to never let anyone else use the gem again because they might try to use it for bad. The end. Sweet dreams, little one.